The command deck of the Horizon's Edge was silent, the kind of silence that came before either diplomacy or disaster. Captain Alara Monroe stood at the forefront, her white dress uniform immaculate, her expression unreadable, the air around her buzz with restrained anxiety. Outside the panoramic windows, the cold glow of the stars flickered like distant onlookers to history in the making. Across from her, the Zarathi delegation emerged from the docking corridor, 8 feet tall, draped in biomechanical armor that seemed to breathe with them, their eyes like twin abysses lit from within. The lead Zarathi stepped forward. Its form was humanoid, but exaggerated, elegant in the way a predator might be. It had no visible mouth, only slits along its elongated jawline and long, jointed appendages protruding from its back like polished obsidian spines. This was first contact, and Monroe was Earth's representative. Her orders were clear: establish peaceful relations, extend a hand of alliance, and above all, avoid conflict. Easy to say from the comfort of high command. Not so easy when face-to-face with a creature that looked bred for war. "Welcome aboard the Horizon's Edge," she said, voice steady despite the tight knot in her stomach. Her words were immediately translated into a low, musical hum by the ship's universal translator. The Zarathi leader paused, its head tilted slightly, and the delay was long enough to make every human in the room shift uneasily. Then it took a step forward. Its hand, or what passed for a hand, emerged, skeletal and plated in black chitin. Monroe extended her own hand. It was a calculated move, a universally understood gesture of diplomacy. The room held its breath. They clasped hands. The Zarathi's grip was colder than ice, and for a fraction of a second, its eyes flared with an inner light. Monroe noticed it, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she held the shake firm and respectful, then released. "Our people seek friendship," she added. The Zarathi said nothing. Instead, it turned, sweeping its gaze across the bridge with what Monroe could only interpret as contempt or maybe curiosity. The delegation followed, moving in eerie synchronization. In less than a minute, they were gone, back to the docking corridor, the doors sealing shut behind them. Applause broke out among the staff. Monroe didn't join in. Later, in the debrief chamber, her executive officer, Commander Reyes, leaned in. "Hell of a handshake, Captain. Think they got the message?" She hesitated. "I'm not sure they understood the message, or if we understood theirs." In a secure briefing hours later, a hologram of the Earth Alliance Council blinked to life before her. Dozens of faces, some civilian, others military, stared down at her from all corners of human space. "You've done it, Captain," Councilor Brennick said. "First contact is official. Peace is in motion." Monroe gave a tight nod, but inside, something twisted. They didn't say anything. No response to our treaty draft. No verbal communication. "They shook your hand," Brennick countered. "That's confirmation enough. You've succeeded, Captain." Monroe said nothing more, but that night, as she reviewed the handshake footage for the 5th time, she couldn't shake the way the Zarathi leader had looked at her. It wasn't hostility, but it wasn't agreement either. It was something else, an acknowledgement, perhaps, of an insult absorbed. Meanwhile, the rest of the galaxy was already moving forward. Celebrations erupted on Earth and in the inner colonies. News feeds overflowed with footage of Monroe standing tall, shaking the hand of the Zarathi ambassador. Treaties were signed symbolically, flags of unity designed, textbooks rewritten overnight to include a new chapter in interstellar relations. No one saw what Monroe saw, or perhaps no one wanted to. Within the ship, small disturbances began to accumulate. The communications officer, Lieutenant Huang, reported an anomalous burst of dark band frequencies following the handshake, a signal that hadn't been there before. The science officer brushed it off as residual electromagnetic feedback. Monroe wasn't convinced. Reyes caught her on the observation deck, standing alone with a tablet clutched in her hand. "You've watched it again." "I keep thinking I missed something," she said. He crossed his arms. "If you're wrong, we've made a friend. If you're right, then I just declared war on the most dangerous species in the galaxy with a handshake." Reyes didn't laugh. Neither did she. The next morning, they received a message, not from the Zarathi, but from Outpost Data 9, a mining colony along the edge of human expansion. The message was short, distorted. Screams echoed beneath a flood of static. Then silence. Theta 9 went dark. Within hours, so did Delta Verge and a research station on Arcus Belt. The disappearances were surgical. No distress calls. No wreckage. Just silence. Panic rippled through command channels. Monroe was ordered to return to Earth for a full debrief. She knew it wouldn't matter. The damage was done. It wasn't sabotage or technical failure. It was retaliation. Her shuttle prepped for departure, but she lingered in the docking bay, staring at the dark void beyond the energy shield. Somewhere out there, the Zarathi were already moving, calculating, judging humanity not by their intentions, but by their symbols. And in their eyes, she had committed the ultimate offense. Elara Monroe wasn't a hero. She was the woman who shook hands with extinction. The scream of the emergency klaxon was almost poetic in its timing, piercing the calm of Earth's orbital command like a prophet screaming into a void. Captain Elara Monroe stood at the edge of the situation table, her eyes locked on the live holograms of 3 separate colonies, now blinking red in synchronized intervals. Red meant silence. No comms. No life signs. "They're gone," whispered Admiral Kale, his voice hollow. 3 colonies in 7 hours. No distress signals. No weapon signatures. Nothing. Elara didn't blink. Her hands were clenched behind her back, knuckles white. She knew better than anyone that silence could scream louder than violence. She had warned them. She had played the diplomat. And now she stood in the war room watching the slow unraveling of everything she had hoped to prevent. "They're not attacking," she said quietly. "They're demonstrating." Kale looked at her, eyebrows furrowed. "Explain." "They're not indiscriminate. Each colony was strategically vital. Communications, mining, logistics. They're showing us how precise they can be, how little effort it takes to erase us." A comms officer's voice cut through the room. "We've received something from the Delta Verge site. It's audio only. Low frequency." Elara turned to the central console as the officer played it. Static, and then, beneath it, a sound not meant for human ears. Deep, resonant, rhythmic. It pulsed like a heart made of stone and fire. Then it shifted, forming words in a broken facsimile of human language. "You chose the ritual. You chose the knife. You chose the old war." Gasps echoed across the command chamber. "That handshake," Elara said softly. "It wasn't peace. It was a rite of challenge. I declared war and smiled doing it." Counselor Brenneck, patched in remotely from Earth, responded with the restraint of a man already counting casualties. "Then we respond in kind. We mobilize. We strike back." "You don't understand what we're dealing with," Elara said. "We can't strike back. We barely understand how they think." "Then learn faster." The order was given within the hour. Human forces, led by the war-hardened Iron Crusade fleet, moved to intercept what was believed to be a Zarathi scout detachment near the Helix Rift. Elara wasn't invited to that battle. She wasn't even informed when it began. She found out the way civilians did, by watching unfold on a delayed military stream 2 hours later. She watched in silence as the Iron Crusade fired first. The Zarathi ships, spindly constructs of dark alloy and shifting geometry, seemed to absorb the energy blast without reaction. And then they answered. It wasn't a battle. It was a correction. In 17 minutes, Earth's most powerful fleet was vaporized. No survivors. No wreckage. Just a gravitational scar where the ships had been. Commander Reyes found her later in the observation chamber, eyes still locked on the afterglow of annihilation. "I saw it," he said. "So did everyone. Council's blaming you." She nodded. "Of course they are." Reyes leaned against the console beside her. "They think if they bury you, the war becomes someone else's fault." Elara turned to him, eyes hard. "Then let them, but I need something more useful than a scapegoat. I need understanding. The Zarathi don't kill for pleasure. They don't gloat. Everything they do is purposeful, and we don't even know what we violated. You think there's still a chance to fix this?" I think we're out of time to argue. It was then that the intercepted broadcast arrived, unintended, fragmented, and buried in a relay satellite near the original first contact site, encrypted in a primitive frequency. It took 6 hours to decode. What emerged was damning. A long-dead precursor race, extinct for over 200,000 years, had left behind warnings embedded in language glyphs scattered across a derelict ring world. The glyphs described a species called the Zerthel, translated roughly to those who answer with fire. Every account ended in the same way: attempted diplomacy, a misunderstood symbol, then extinction. The descriptions matched the Zerathi perfectly. They weren't new. They were ancient. They were survivors of an age long forgotten, wielders of a legacy forged in interstellar trial and response. And they had rules, ones humanity had violated with the best of intentions. Counselor Brenneck refused to acknowledge the broadcast publicly. He feared mass panic. But Alara didn't care about optics anymore. She cared about time, and theirs was shrinking. She requested reinstatement. They refused, so she filed for emergency diplomatic protocol. Clause 9 Alpha, reserved for last contact scenarios, typically suicidal missions to parley under impossible conditions. No one had invoked it in over a century. Clause 9 Alpha granted her one ship, limited crew, and no protection. It was a white flag made of glass. Reyes volunteered immediately. "I won't ask why," she said. "Good," he replied. "Because I don't know if I have a reason anymore. But I'd rather die trying to fix this than watch everything burn." Their ship was a courier-class vessel named the Vigil, small, fast, and woefully underarmed. The crew was hand-picked, linguists, xenologists, cryptographers, not soldiers. They departed in silence, slipping through human-controlled space like ghosts of the war. No one wanted to admit they'd already lost. As they crossed into the edge of Zerathi-influenced territory, the stars began to change. Light bent differently here. Space itself seemed to resist them, like a tide against their hull. Communication systems became unreliable. The air inside the ship felt heavier. Reyes monitored everything. "It's like they're watching," he said. "They are," Alara replied. "And if they let us keep going, it means they want something too." They didn't know what they were heading into, or if they'd ever return. But somewhere beyond the veil of stars, Alara believed there was still a chance to speak before the final silence fell. Even if her voice was the last one left, the void felt different this far from home, deeper, more ancient, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. The Vigil glided in eerie silence, its engines humming with subdued energy. Captain Alara Monroe stood at the helm, eyes locked on the swirling mist ahead, where space shimmered unnaturally. It wasn't just light distortion. It was movement, shape, pattern. They were being summoned. Behind her, Commander Reyes leaned over the sensor console, fingers twitching across the holographic interface. Still nothing on comms. Passive scans only. If they're watching us, they're doing it from outside measurable space. "They want us to feel exposed," Alara said. "Mission accomplished." A voice broke the tension. Dr. Lyra San, their chief xenolinguist, spoke from the data station with a mix of awe and dread. "This region doesn't match any known star maps. It's like we cross into a pocket dimension, or a sanctum, sacred ground." Alara asked, "Or a testing chamber?" The crew had grown quieter over the past days. Not out of fear, but reverence, like pilgrims entering the final shrine. None of them had expected to make it this far, and yet the Zerathi allowed their passage. Like wolves stalking prey, they weren't quite ready to kill. It began with a pulse. Not light, not sound, something primal. An emotional resonance that rippled through every surface of the ship and every cell of their bodies. Not pain, not fear, something older, a presence, a mind, vast and endless. Alara collapsed to one knee, clutching her chest as 1,000 thoughts bled into her mind. They weren't words. They were concepts, memories, judgments, fury, and then clarity. The Zerathi were waiting. She rose, slowly, her eyes distant but alert. "They've opened a path." The Vigil veered on its own. No commands were issued, no course plotted. But the ship obeyed. Before them, space folded inward, revealing a vast structure suspended in nothingness. A living cathedral of metal and bone, stretching miles in every direction. Tendrils of dark matter pulsed like veins through its spires. A docking aperture yawned open. Reyes whispered, "We're walking into the lion's den." "They want to understand us," Ilera replied, "or to decide how we die." The airlock hissed open with solemn finality. Ilera led the team out, clad in diplomatic armor. Formal but defensible. Reyes followed, pulse weapon holstered but accessible. Dr. Sen clutched a portable translator and a relic interface, embedded with symbols drawn from the ancient precursor archive. Inside the structure, there was no gravity, but they floated as if held by unseen hands. The architecture defied logic. Organic yet structured, symmetrical yet shifting, as if the place responded to their presence. Then it appeared. Not one Zarathi, but a chorus. Tall, obsidian figures stepped forward, lit by internal bioluminescence. The one at the center, taller and more intricately adorned, regarded Ilera with eyes like collapsing suns. She inclined her head. "We come in submission, not in shame, but in recognition. We misunderstood your rights. We seek to atone." The central Zarathi did not respond immediately. Instead, it extended a limb toward Dr. San, who instinctively raised the translator. The machine sparked. Fried circuits. Static. And then, without it, Ilera heard the Zarathi's voice in her mind, resonating like the chorus of a dying star. "You did not misunderstand. You chose your own frame. You placed your symbols above the ancient rites. You offered the hand of peace in the language of war." Ilera exhaled. "We didn't know. You did not ask. You assumed. You reached with pride, not reverence." There was no accusation in the voice, just truth, cold and final. Reyes stepped forward, defiant but respectful. "So why allow us to come here? Why let us live while others die?" The Zarathi looked at him, not with malice, with calculation. "Because extinction is not the beginning. It is a response. You have one moment, one act, one truth to offer that might outweigh the insult." The chamber darkened. A sphere emerged between them, rotating slowly. Images flickered across its surface. Every act of human violence, every war, every promise broken for profit or pride. But interwoven, too, were moments of sacrifice, love, defiance of tyranny. Dr. Sen spoke carefully. "It's judgment. They're weighing our soul." "Not soul. Pattern." Ilera stepped forward. Her voice did not tremble. "Then let me give you mine." She placed her hand on the sphere. Pain rushed through her like fire. Memories she hadn't recalled in years erupted. Her brother dying on Europa during a relief mission gone wrong. The child she lost to sickness in the outer colonies. The moment she chose duty over everything else. The Zarathi watched, and then in the deepest silence, Ilera spoke, not in defense, but in confession. "We are flawed. We are reckless. But we are not empty. We build, we mourn, we love. We reached out not because we thought ourselves above you, but because we hoped. Foolishly, maybe, but truly." The light faded. The sphere collapsed into dust. The central Zarathi inclined its head just slightly, a gesture that mirrored her own from earlier. The knife was drawn. The blood was spilled. But the voice was heard. It turned, and the others followed. A passage opened in the far wall. They were being allowed to leave. Reyes stared in disbelief. "That's it? They forgive us." "No," Ilera said, "but they've given us time." As they returned to the vigil, something unseen shifted in the darkness beyond the cathedral. Watching, waiting. The war was not over, but the fire had paused. They had not earned peace, but they had bought a chance. The stars stretched into ribbons as the vigil leapt back into known space, the ship trembling under the strain of returning from a realm that had no name. Captain Ilera Monroe stood motionless on the bridge, eyes focused not on the glowing console displays, but on the emptiness ahead. She had seen too much in that silence. What the Zarathi were, what they weren't, and the horrifying truth that humanity stood not against malevolent force, but civilization bound by sacred laws older than memory itself. Commander Reyes broke the silence. Long-range beacons are active again. We're back in real space. How long were we gone? Ilara asked without looking. 5 days. But it's worse than that. He tapped at the screen, pulling up military broadcasts, civilian signals, fragmented footage. They attacked while we were inside the construct. Simultaneously. 17 colonies. Gone. Ilara closed her eyes. They gave us a chance. But they didn't stop the blade mid-swing. They gave you a chance, Reyes said softly. And you earned it. Maybe now it's our turn. She turned to him, jaw tight. No one's ready. Not the Council. Not the fleets. No one understands what we're up against. They're going to make you explain it. You're the only one who's seen them, spoken to them. No one spoke, she muttered. Not really. They returned to Earth orbit 2 hours later. The once pristine skyline of the orbital ring was fractured, scarred by a surprise raid during the synchronized attacks. The Council was in hiding. Martial law had been declared, and Captain Monroe was no longer hailed as a diplomat. She was a liability, a reminder of what went wrong. But they let her in. A week passed in sealed debrief rooms, in cold interrogations and political deflections. The Council, fractured and terrified, wanted clarity. They wanted an answer to the question everyone was too afraid to ask aloud. Why us? Why now? Ilara stood before them, not in uniform, but in plain civilian dress. Her presence alone filled the chamber. Grit hardened into posture, grief buried beneath discipline. They don't want us gone, she said. They want us corrected. They operate on principles older than language, rituals of challenge, acknowledgement, respect. What we saw as peace, they saw as a trial, and we failed. Counselor Brennick, pale and shrunken from the confident figure she once knew, shook his head. How do we fix it? You don't fix it. You learn from it. You adapt. And if we can't, then we die, she said, not cruelly but factually, not out of hatred, not out of conquest, but as a lesson to others who would follow us. There was silence. No one wanted to believe it, but they couldn't deny it either. Later, on the terrace above the orbital sanctuary, Reyes found her. The lights of Earth flickered beneath them like fading dreams. You still think we have a chance? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she held up the data crystal, tiny, dull, and inert. The Zarathi had given it to her in the final moment before departure, slipping it into her mind, letting it manifest in her hand. She didn't know what it contained. Not yet. They gave us this. A seed, maybe. A warning. Or something more. Council won't act on it, Reyes said. They'll bury it, just like they tried to bury you. Then we plant ourselves. She uploaded the contents in secret, distributed copies to every academic, engineer, and theorist she could trust. The data was complex, layered with non-Euclidean logic, synthetic biology, and fragments of philosophy encoded in sound. But it was something new, something not human, and it sparked questions. And those questions ignited minds. Weeks passed. Small breakthroughs emerged. Language patterns, gesture maps, energy signatures. Humanity began to listen, not with weapons, with wonder. And then, just as quietly as they had attacked, the Zarathi stopped. The silence wasn't peace. But it wasn't war either. It was observation. Ilara knew it wouldn't last forever. But she also knew the rules now. The fire would return if humanity proved itself deaf again. One night, she stood alone in the observatory aboard the Vigil, now recommissioned for deep space cultural studies. Stars shimmered beyond the glass. The data crystal, now warm with intermittent pulses of light, sat in her palm. Reyes entered without a word, handing her a steaming mug of tea. I've read some of the new interpretations, he said. Some believe it's a treaty. Others think it's a test. They're both right, she replied. He looked at her. So what are you going to do now? She smiled faintly. I'm going to keep listening. Because sometimes survival wasn't about strength or strategy. It was about humility, about learning the shape of another's truth before your own pride destroyed it. And in the silence between stars, Monroe hoped that somewhere the Zarathi were listening too.